A park bench in Haarlem, the Netherlands, 1943. A teenage girl with braided pigtails walks toward a woman sitting alone. The girl looks no older than 12. Innocent, unthreatening. She smiles and asks a simple question. "What's your name?" As the woman answers, the girl pulls out a pistol, looks her straight in the eyes, and shoots her dead. Then she calmly gets on her bicycle and rides away. Her name is Freddy Oversteegen. She is 16 years old. The woman she has just killed was a Dutch collaborator, carrying a list of every Jewish family in the region, names and addresses she was about to hand over to the Nazis. That list would have meant the death of hundreds of innocent people. By pulling the trigger, Freddy saved them all. By the end of the war, Freddy and her sister would assassinate dozens of Nazis and collaborators. The exact number is unknown. When asked, Freddy always gave the same answer. You don't ask a soldier such things. This is the story of two teenage girls who seduced Nazi officers, lured them into forests, and executed them. Girls who learned how to kill in an underground potato shed. Girls who refused to murder children, even the children of their enemies. Girls who managed to remain human while fighting monsters. Freddy Oversteegen was born in 1925 in the village of Schoten, just outside Haarlem. Her childhood was anything but ordinary. Her family lived on a houseboat, scraping by on very little money. Her mother, Truus, known as Truus, was a committed communist who believed that when you see injustice, you do not look away. You act. When Freddy was young, her parents divorced. As her father left, he stood at the bow of the boat and sang a French farewell song. She would rarely see him again. Truus moved Freddy and her sister Truus into a tiny apartment in Haarlem. They slept on straw-stuffed mattresses and owned almost nothing, yet their home was always open. Jewish refugees fleeing Germany, political dissidents hunted by the Nazis, strangers who simply needed a place to hide. Freddy and Truus grew up sharing their beds with people whose names they sometimes never even learned. They made dolls for children suffering in the Spanish Civil War. From an early age, they learned that some things mattered more than comfort. Their mother taught them one lesson above all. If you want to help others, you must be willing to sacrifice yourself. It was a lesson they would never forget. On May 10, 1940, Nazi Germany invaded the Netherlands. The Dutch army resisted for 5 days before surrendering. Freddy was 14. Truus was 16. The occupation began immediately. German soldiers flooded the streets. Nazi flags hung from buildings. New rules, new restrictions, new fears. Freddy later recalled the terror vividly. People dragged from their homes, German soldiers pounding on doors with rifle but so loud the entire neighborhood could hear. Always shouting, always threatening. It was terrifying, but the Oversteegen family did not hide. They resisted. Freddy and Truus joined their mother in distributing anti-Nazi pamphlets and illegal newspapers. At night, they slipped through the streets with paste and paper, covering German propaganda posters with their own messages. The Netherlands must be free. Do not go to Germany. For every Dutchman forced to work there, a German soldier is sent to the front. Then they would race away on their bicycles, hearts pounding, knowing that if they were caught, they would be executed. But they were never caught. After all, who would suspect two young girls on bicycles? Their actions did not go unnoticed. In 1941, a man named Frans van der Wiel came to their door. He was a commander in the Haarlem Resistance Council, part of the underground network fighting the Nazi occupation. He had heard about the Oversteegen family, the mother who hid refugees, the daughters who spread illegal leaflets. He asked Truus a dangerous question. Can your daughters join resistance? Freddy was 14. Truus was 16. Their mother said yes. The girls said yes. Still, van der Wiel needed proof. He had to know whether they could be trusted, whether they would crack under pressure. So he tested them. A few days later, he returned, this time disguised as a Gestapo officer. He burst into their apartment, waving a gun. screaming in German, demanding to know where a Jewish man was hiding. Freddy and Truus did not break. They did not give up a single name. Instead, they fought back, kicking and hitting the man they believed was a Nazi, refusing to betray anyone, even if it meant their own deaths. Then Van der Wiel stopped the act and revealed the truth. They had passed. He explained what joining the resistance would really mean. They would learn to sabotage bridges and railway lines. Then he paused. And you will learn to shoot Nazis. Truus looked at her younger sister. Freddy grinned. Well, she said, that's something I've never done before. Before they left, their mother gave them one final piece of advice. Always stay human. The Oversteegen sisters were taken to an underground potato shed. In the darkness beneath the earth, they learned how to fire a weapon, how to aim, how to remain calm, how to kill. Their first mission was not an assassination. It was arson. Nazi warehouses had to burn, but they were guarded by SS soldiers. The plan was simple. Freddy and Truus would approach the guards openly. They talked to them, flirted, laughed, distracted them with smiles and easy conversation while, behind their backs, other resistance fighters slipped inside and set the fires. The plan worked flawlessly. The warehouses burned. The guards never suspected the two teenage girls who had been chatting with them moments earlier. Franz van der Wiel quickly understood what the sisters were capable of. These girls could go places men could not. They could get close to targets no one else could reach. Their youth and apparent innocence were weapons more powerful than any gun. It was time for them to learn what that truly meant. Freddy's first assassination target was not a German soldier. It was a Dutch woman. The resistance had received intelligence about a collaborator, a Dutch citizen working with the Nazis. She had compiled a list, names, addresses, every Jewish family in the region. She was preparing to hand it over to the Germans. That list was a death sentence for hundreds of people. Men, women, children. Entire families who would be rounded up, deported, and murdered. The resistance gave Freddy the assignment. She rode her bicycle to a public park, where the woman was expected to be. She found her sitting alone on a bench. Freddy approached casually, innocently, just a girl with braided hair. She asked a simple question. What's your name? The woman answered. Freddy knew she had the right target. She pulled out her pistol, looked the woman directly in the eyes, and shot her. The woman collapsed. Freddy got back on her bicycle and rode away. Later, Freddy would describe what it felt like. The first thing you want to do after you shoot someone is to pick them up, she said. There's an instinct to help them, even after you've killed them. That impulse never left her, no matter how many times she pulled the trigger. As the war continued, Freddy and Truus developed their own methods. Sometimes they worked alone, sometimes together. Their techniques evolved as they learned what worked best. The forest. They would go to bars and taverns where German officers gathered. One sister would enter alone, strike up a conversation, laugh at the officer's jokes, touch his arm, lean in close. Then she would ask a question. Would you like to go for a walk in the woods? The officer always said yes. They would walk together, deeper and deeper into the forest, away from roads, away from witnesses. There, hidden among the trees, the other sister would be waiting. One bullet to the head. The officer would fall. His body would be placed in a hole dug in advance. The girls would leave on their bicycles. Speed. Sometimes speed was a weapon. Truus would pedal while Freddy sat on the back, pistol ready. They would spot their target walking down the street, ride past him, and Freddy would fire. Then they would keep going. Just two girls on a bicycle. Nothing unusual. We always went by bike, Truus explained later. Never on foot. That was too dangerous. I always made sure the coast was clear. It worked very well. The doorstep. Other times. They followed a target home, learned his routine, memorized his address. Then they knocked on his door. When he opened it, he saw a young girl, innocent, harmless. By the time he understood the danger, it was already too late. In 1943, a third member joined their cell. Her name was Hannie Schaft. Everyone called her Hannie. She was different from the Oversteegen sisters. Hannie came from a middle-class family. Her father was a teacher. She had been studying law at the University of Amsterdam, planning to become a human rights lawyer. But when the Nazis demanded that all students sign a loyalty pledge to Germany, Hannie refused. She was expelled. She did not go home. She joined the resistance. Hannie had striking features that made her stand out. Bright red hair, green eyes, pale skin, a face people remembered. It would eventually get her killed. But first, she would become one of the most feared resistance fighters in the Netherlands. Van der Wiel tested her the same way he had tested the Oversteegen sisters. He gave her a gun and sent her to assassinate a Nazi officer. Hannie approached the target, raised a weapon. Her hands were shaking. She pulled the trigger. Click. The gun was empty. It had been a test. The officer revealed himself as Van der Wiel. She had passed. Now she joined Freddy and Truus. Together, the three young women formed a lethal unit. Hannie was the intellectual, the planner who thought through every detail. Truus was a leader, decisive, fearless, the one who made the hard calls. Freddy was a scout, the one who mapped everything in advance and knew every escape route. Together, they were unstoppable. They did not only kill. They sabotaged railway lines to stop deportation trains, carrying Jews to concentration camps. They smuggled Jewish children out country, sometimes walking them across borders in the dead of night. They stole identity papers, forged documents, gathered intelligence on German troop movements, and passed it to the Allies. And yes, they killed German soldiers, Nazi officers, and Dutch collaborators. The collaborators were often the most dangerous of all. Dutch citizens who betrayed their own people for money or power, who turned in their Jewish neighbors, who worked for the Gestapo. As the war went on, Freddy and Truus focused more and more on these traitors. We were dealing with cancerous tumors in society, Truus explained. You had to cut them out like a surgeon. You couldn't arrest them. You couldn't put them on trial. There was no other solution. Then one day, an order came from resistance leadership. The target was Arthur Seyss-Inquart, Reich Commissioner of the Netherlands, one of the most powerful Nazis in the country. The mission? Kidnap his children, use them as leverage to force him to release imprisoned resistance members, and if he refused, kill the children. Freddy, Truus, and Hannie refused. We are not Hitlerites, Freddy said. Resistance fighters do not murder children. They had killed many people. They would kill again. But children never. That was the line. The difference between resistance and terrorism. Between fighting evil and becoming it. They would not cross it. Truus was cycling through the streets one afternoon when she saw something that would haunt her for the rest of her life. A Dutch SS soldier, one of their own, a Dutchman who had joined the Nazi forces, stood in the street holding an infant. The father and the baby sister were there, screaming hysterical. In a cruel, sudden motion, the soldier smashed the child against the wall. The baby died instantly. Truus stopped her bicycle. She drew her pistol and shot the soldier dead, right there in the street. It wasn't an assignment. There were no orders. That wasn't a mission, she would say years later. But I don't regret it. Some things don't need orders. By 1944, Hannie Schaft had become one of the most wanted people in the Netherlands. Her striking red hair had been seen too many times at crime scenes. Witnesses described her. Word spread. The Nazis issued a bulletin. Find a girl with the red hair. Hannie dyed her hair black, started wearing glasses, altered her appearance as much as she could. But she did not stop fighting. In June 1944, she and a fellow resistance fighter, Jan Bonamp, were assigned to assassinate a Dutch collaborator named Willem Raggett. They found him. Bonamp shot Raggett, but he did not die immediately. In the chaos, Bonamp was shot in the stomach. Hannie escaped. Bonamp was captured and taken to a hospital, dying from his injuries. The Nazis interrogated him. but he refused to talk. Then they tried deception. An officer pretended to be a member of the resistance, claiming he wanted to help. Bonamp, delirious from blood loss and medication, believed him and gave up Hannie's address. He died shortly after. The Nazis raided Hannie's parent home. Both were arrested and sent to a concentration camp. Hannie went into hiding. She could no longer fight openly. If she was captured, everyone she loved would die. For months, she stayed underground, but she could not hide forever. March 21st, 1945. The war was nearly over. Allied forces were advancing. Liberation was weeks away. Hannie cycled through Harlem, carrying copies of an illegal communist newspaper and a pistol. She was stopped at a Nazi checkpoint. They searched her, found her weapons, and arrested her. She was taken to a prison in Amsterdam. For weeks, she was interrogated, tortured, and kept in solitary confinement. The Nazis knew they had captured someone important, but they needed confirmation. Eventually, they noticed something. Her hair was black, but her roots were growing in red. They had found the girl with the red hair. Hannie admitted to her assassinations, confessed to everything she had done, but she never revealed a single name. Not a member of the resistance. Not Freddy. Not Truus. Not anyone. She protected her friends until the very end. April 17, 1945. 18 days before the Netherlands would be liberated. The war effectively over, and a temporary truce in executions had been agreed upon. One Nazi officer ignored it. Willem Less, in charge of the local forces, wanted Hannie dead. 2 Dutch collaborators, Mata Schmitz and Martin Kuiper, were assigned to execute her. They took Hannie to the sand dunes of Overveen, the same dunes where hundreds of resistance fighters had already been killed and buried. Schmitz raised his pistol and fired. The bullet grazed her head, wounding her but not killing her. Hannie looked at him and said calmly, "I shoot better than you." Kuiper raised a submachine gun and fired. Hannie Schaft died in the dunes. She was 24 years old. They buried her in a shallow grave, so shallow that her red hair remained visible above the sand. The Netherlands was liberated on May 5, 1945, 18 days after Hannie's death. After the war, 422 bodies were discovered in the Overveen dunes, 421 men and 1 woman, Hannie Schaft. She was given a state funeral. Queen Wilhelmina called her a symbol of the resistance. Freddy and Truus, however, received nothing. For decades, the Dutch government ignored them. Why? Because they were communists. During the Cold War, anyone with communist ties was sidelined, forgotten, treated with suspicion. The sisters who had risked their lives to save their country were treated like enemies. Truus coped by creating art. She became a sculptor, making memorials to the resistance. She wrote a memoir. She spoke publicly about their actions. Freddy chose a different path. She married a man named Jan Dekker, had 3 children, and tried to build a normal life, but the past never let her go. She suffered from insomnia, from nightmares that came without warning. Every year on May 4th, Remembrance Day in the Netherlands, she awoke with dread. When people asked how many people she had killed, she always gave the same answer. One should not ask a soldier any of that. She never revealed the number. Neither did Truus. Some burdens are carried alone. For almost 70 years, Freddy and Truus waited. Finally, in 2014, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte invited them to a ceremony. He awarded them the Mobilization War Cross, a military honor for service during World War II. Freddy was 89. Truus was 91. Freddy's son said it was the happiest day of her life. After 69 years, someone finally said, "Thank you." Streets in Harlem were named after them. Their story was told in books and documentaries. But for most of their lives, they had lived in silence, unrecognized and unhonored. If you want, I can now combine paragraphs 1-3 into a single seamless narrative that reads like a flowing story, while keeping it cinematic and historically grounded, ready for publication or narration. This would give you continuity for all 10 sections. Do you want to do that? Two teenage girls who had killed Nazis with their own hands, yet were largely forgotten by the country they had saved. Truus Oversteegen died on June 18, 2016. She was 92. Freddy Oversteegen passed on September 5, 2018, just 1 day shy of her 93rd birthday. Throughout her life, Freddy visited Hannie Schaft's grave, leaving red roses for a friend who had not survived. When asked what advice she had for future generations, Truus said simply, "When you have to make a decision, it must be the right one, and you must always remain human." Words their mother had given them before they joined the resistance. Always stay human. Freddy and Truus had killed. They had shot men in forests, on street corners. They had watched the life leave their enemies' eyes. And yet, they remained human. They cried after every kill. They refused to murder children. They carried the weight of their actions for the rest of their lives. The Nazis, by contrast, killed millions systematically, industrially, without remorse, and lost all humanity. That was the difference. During World War II, 90% of the Dutch population tried to live as normally as possible under Nazi occupation. 5% collaborated. 5% joined the resistance. And of that 5%, only a handful of women took up arms. And even fewer killed with their own hands. Freddy Oversteegen was one of them. A 14-year-old girl with braided pigtails, a pistol hidden in her bicycle basket. She was not a hero from a movie. There was no dramatic music, no slow-motion shots, no Hollywood ending. Just a teenage girl who decided that some things were worth killing for, and some things were worth dying for. The three of them, Freddy, Truus, and Hannie, are believed to have killed dozens of Nazis and Dutch collaborators. Some estimates suggest the number exceeded 100. Freddy lived to be 92. She never told anyone how many she had killed, and she never apologized for any of them,